It's time now for Business Roundup, and that means, of course, this week that we are checking in with our team at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. We're going to head back to Kate Moody, who joins us live now. Kate, over to you.
Hi, Molly. Well, as we were talking about earlier, everyone is looking ahead to this keynote speech by Donald Trump. He'll be kicking off in about 45 minutes' time. But because it's the last day of the World Economic Forum, we're also looking back a little bit at the events and themes of the week. To talk about both those issues, I'm pleased to be joined by Margery Kraus, founder and executive chairman of APCO Worldwide, the consulting and communications firm. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure.
What tone do you expect to hear the American president adopt?
Well, it seems from the hints we've gotten from the other cabinet members that it'll be a continuation of, or a redefinition anyway, of what his America First policy really means on a global stage. I assume that's what they're going to do, but one never knows, right, with our president.
And in the international spotlight, he does sometimes shift his tone a little bit, doesn't he? People in general in Davos do. We heard from the Chinese leader Xi Jinping last year in a speech that sounded nothing like him. Could that happen, do you think?
It could happen. I would hope it would happen, because this is a great chance to redefine or to define how we're going to go forward. And I think that would be this would be a great place to do it.
Now, shifting away from Mr. Trump a little bit, gender equality has been really high on the agenda this week. We've got an all-female panel of co-chairs leading the summit this time for the first time in history. Emmanuel Macron and Justin Trudeau among the speakers who spoke very passionately about women's rights and gender equality. It's not something that President Trump has been known to embrace in the past.
No, I don't think we'll hear much about gender equality in his speech. I don't think it's a real passion of his, although I think others around him have that passion. And but it has to be authentic, and I think that wouldn't come across in probably not a way that would be respected. But there has been a lot said about gender equality, and I've been coming for a long time, and this is the largest number of women delegates they've had, and we've never had a situation where they're all women co-chairs. And I just left a panel for women entrepreneurs where we had to turn people away, and I think all of that speaks to much greater interest in women's place in the workforce and the role women play in society.
The question is always, is what's discussed and put forward here in Davos, is it just symbolic, or does it actually translate into the real world? Do you think that this might be a shifting point?
I think that's a combination. I think the fact that it makes the main stage in Davos means that it's come to the attention of a lot of people that this is the time. And I do think that, the fact that these audiences for the discussion have been men and women, or I should say women and men, I think that's a big change as well. So I think it has gone mainstream, and I think that's a really good thing. And I salute the forum for doing that. And I think anytime we can advance the cause and, stop talking about gender equality and start talking about equality, business, other things, I think that's a good thing. So I think we're on a track.
We've also heard a lot of optimism at this week's Davos. Does that reflect what you see at your base in Washington, D.C., or is it a bit of a disconnect with the world that you're living in, that people outside of Davos are really living in and experiencing?
I don't want to limit it to Washington, because our firm is all over the world, and I happen to go all over the world. I do think that's the one disconnect that I think surprised me the most, because the last couple of years, there's always been something on the agenda that's really been scary or frightening, whether it was the financial crisis, and then it was, the whole refugee situation, and trying to figure out what to do. And this year, it's almost like we're in a different world here. And especially since the title is about a fractured world, I think there's been a lot of focus on the economy and optimism, a lot of business optimism. There were a lot of discussions about cups half full or half empty. And that is surprising, because I think that is a disconnect. I think we're still going to see a lot. There's still a lot of people hurting out there, and there's a lot of income inequality, and there was much less of a discussion about that. And I don't know quite how we're going to marry the optimism, which I salute and I think is fabulous, with making that optimism for all, spreading the wealth.
So optimism, but also a lot of uncertainty. Could you isolate perhaps one or two top risks that we're facing from your point of view going into 2018?
Well, I think one thing might be whether it's the uncertainty. I mean, if there's one thing people are worried about, it's the things they don't see, right? The unpredictable things. And I think that those things are, a terrorist attack of some major catastrophe. We've had so much in the U.S. in terms of weather-related catastrophes. So I think, something like that is a very big risk, and I hope we're paying attention to that. And I guess the other one is how superficial the growth is, and whether, there's any kind of economic dislocation, I think, will be very hard to sustain because people are just recovering, and not everybody's recovering from the last recession.
Margery Kraus of APCO, thanks so much for joining us here on France 24. We will, of course, be following all of Donald Trump's speech and the reaction to it throughout the afternoon. Back to you, Molly.
That's right. All right, Kate. Thank you very much for that. Kate Moody there in Davos.